Let's talk for a minute about how to accurately read body language. Because it's not as simple as just watching what you're doing. You have to do it in the context of many things, right? So what are some of those things?
I mean, it can be in the middle of a conversation. It can be like at our team meetings. If you can notice, if you're paying attention, a subject brought up that makes someone a little uncomfortable. You can notice something that comes up that might make them a little bit angry. And then also with, same thing with parents and telling them news of the day, you can notice pretty immediately if you're paying attention, if they're upset.
And do you have to read it in the context of the situation?
Sure.
In a heated discussion, is body language interpreted differently than if you're having a friendly discussion at the grocery store?
Yeah.
Right, so you have to look at the context. Does culture play an impact? Male versus female, different countries, the
Yes.
North versus the South.
Oh, yeah. Very much so.
Rural versus suburban or urban, right?
Yeah.
All make a difference. You have to also, you can't take things out of context, can you? And then we're all unique. Over time, Vera, in your room, do you know the different body language of your teammates and children in your classroom? Do we all have our own baseline?
Yes.
What's something about your body language?
Most of the time, if I'm upset, I'm quiet.
Oh,
Yeah.
let me write that down.
Yeah. So better I'm quiet and observe than,
Pay attention.
and if I'm,
Yeah.
or I can cry, sometimes,
Mhm. What is something in your baseline behavior?
I think I get quiet too.
Mm-hmm.
And I might cross my arms or, put my hand on my hip or something
Right.
like that.
Deborah has told me when I'm mad, my lips get small. So she knows when I'm mad by my lips. I was never aware of that. Do you have anything in your baseline behavior?
Yes, when I get upset, I definitely shut down altogether. My facial expressions may be weird. I probably will cross my arms and say nothing's wrong when it definitely is something wrong. I tend to now not make eye contact if I'm upset. I try to go within myself to talk to myself, be like, okay, it's not that serious, it's fine, let's just get over it, and then I'll be like, okay, better. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
Right. What about you?
I think I clench, like I get a little bit tense, especially in like the jaw, and then just kind of like trying to settle it down, breathing. My breathing changes, I think.
And the same thing, I kind of do the.
Yeah, where you're
Like when I'm thinking about it, I'll probably shake my head,
Right.
probably do the eye roll. I mean, it's pretty obvious when I'm upset. I think my whole team knows. You okay?
Well, yesterday I was, we were talking to a teacher candidate, and there was one of the directors was in the room with me, and I walked in while they were talking, and I have become really attuned to body language, and I picked up that this young teacher was upset. So after the director walked out for a minute, I said, "Are you upset?" And she burst out in tears, and she was feeling intimidated. So I had the director come back in, and I said, "Miss Director, did you notice anything in the body language?" Because when the voice quivers and they're kind of shaking. It was pretty obvious, right? And we talked it through, and she felt great at the end of the meeting. What would have happened with her day if and I'm not boasting in this, but if I hadn't noticed, how would she have felt the rest of the day?
Probably exactly like that, and horrible, and
Right.
And taking it out possibly on her co-teachers and the children as
Right.
well.
And she would have felt bad about herself, in which she had built it up in her mind into this much bigger thing than it really was.
probably.
Probably, because that's what we do.
right.
We, especially the more seasoned people at the school, like you had said, it is a huge shock when you first join here, isn't it? It is a different experience altogether. You're the newest here. You have to pay attention to the body language of the new teachers, because it's telling us a lot, isn't it?
Yes.
A lot. whether they're under stress, whether they feel comfortable. But the same with the children, right?
Mm-hmm.
The same with the parents. Level 1, they get the brunt of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You do.
And you have very anxious people.
Very, yes.
Do you ever talk about their body language with them?
No, no. If we sense it, we'll just ask, is something going on or something okay? But we don't never
And if they say yes, and they're like this.
And then we just address the issue. We don't
Right.
actually address the body language issue. We just try to address the issue.
I'm more gutsy. I will.
Yeah.
Because it diffuses it.
Well, I'll take it to like what's going on with a child. Like if I see a parent that walks in that just looks defeated or tired or even aggravated, I'll be like, so how did she do last night? Did she have a good night? Like talking about the child, and then that usually opens up, no, she didn't have a good night. I didn't get much sleep. And that's usually the problem where I'm worried about today because this happened last night. So I usually, I talk to them about it, but I don't like directly say, why are you so tense? Or, why do you look so
I
tired?
wouldn't say it like that. I would usually say something like, Mrs. Smith, and is everything okay? I notice you're not looking at me. Are you uncomfortable? Is there something we need to talk about? I mean, I think level 1, especially with new families, they come in with a belief system that they can't hurt teachers' feelings. We have to break them of that, right? And so that, because it breaks the partnership down and they'll come to us. You have all the cues and clues that they're uncomfortable, right? They won't look you in the eye, they're rushing in and out, they're standing outside the window and watching. They appear tense in how they're talking to you, right?
Yes.
But it does take guts to talk to that person. But they're so grateful.
Yes,
They are so grateful. And I'm sure you miss extrovert down here. You probably don't have a problem with that.
Not at all.
Right.
And I have such good relationships with the parents, and that's important to me because if I had a child that young in school starting new,
Yeah.
I would want to feel comfortable calling,
Yeah.
a couple times a day, especially that first couple weeks, just being like, is everything okay? Without kind of being like, some teachers hate when parents call. You kind of get that, she's fine. Where you should be more, everything's great, she just
Right.
had a bottle, just kind of explain what's happening, and it'll just immediately, they feel like they can trust.
Bingo.
They feel comfortable.
They can.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say something in closing. If you're going to comment on someone's body language, which you have to have a finesse about it, you cannot sound judgmental. You're mad, I can tell by your body language. It's just going to completely shut them down, right? Right. So you have to have some finesse in it. But I have found every single time I do it, it opens up a dialogue. Because sometimes they're surprised and they don't even know they're communicating what they're communicating. And I'll say, look, you're saying you're okay, but you appear agitated, and you're saying you're okay. And then sometimes the person might say, look, I had a hard night at home, but they appreciate that we've noticed them, right? Does it bother you when people point it out to you?
Not anymore.
Did it at first?
Yeah.
Really?
Because I wasn't aware of it. So I was like, what do you mean? There's nothing wrong with me. So if I didn't know, then I was like, wait, a taken back. Like, what are you trying to say? Are you to me, I took it as a judgmental way of like trying to put something on me that I was trying to hide, but in
Hide from yourself. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I could see why that would upset you. Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.